I accused my brother-in-law in front of the whole family because he harassed me, but my family did not. My married brother-in-law is sexually harassing me. Should I tell my husband? What should I do? My name is Jessica, and I am 29 years old. I've been happily married to my husband Robert for 7 years. We have 2 lovely children, a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. Our life has been mostly tranquil and satisfying. Robert works as a software developer, while I stay at home to look after our kids. VDJ, a choice we made together, and one that I fully embrace. Around a year ago, Robert's brother, Kevin, came back from living overseas with his wife and children. Initially, I was thrilled about their return, thinking it would be wonderful for the family to reconnect and for our children to get to know their cousins. However, from the very first family gathering after their return, I felt uneasy. Kevin made me uncomfortable in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on at first. He would stare at me inappropriately, stand too close during conversations, and make suggestive remarks about my looks. I'm generally considered attractive and have a large bust, so I'm accustomed to receiving unwelcome attention. However, I always strive to dress conservatively and use minimal makeup to avoid drawing too much attention. I believe it's normal to dress up for special occasions like weddings or birthday parties and to wear a swimsuit at the beach. I should be able to feel comfortable and confident without inviting inappropriate behavior. Despite my discomfort, I didn't want to cause any unnecessary conflict, especially since Kevin had just reunited with the family. I tried to ignore his behavior, hoping it would cease. When Kevin started sending me funny pictures and videos on Messenger, I didn't respond much. On the surface, it seemed like a typical thing for a brother-in-law to do. Still, it made me uneasy, and I decided to bring it up with Robert. Robert wasn't surprised when I mentioned my concerns. He admitted that his brother had always been a bit of a jerk and promised to talk to him. Robert's support was comforting, but the situation didn't get better. We see Kevin and his family at least once a month because they live with my in-laws, and every visit filled me with dread. The breaking point came during our last visit when Kevin attempted to touch my butt, and Robert witnessed it. The resulting confrontation was intense. Robert confronted Kevin, and the situation quickly escalated, leading to Robert shoving Kevin before my father-in-law stepped in to separate them. We left their house immediately, the atmosphere thick with tension and unresolved anger. Not long after that incident, my mother-in-law came to visit me at home. I was alone with our toddler and baby when she arrived. She told me that my sister-in-law felt uncomfortable and blamed me for causing trouble within the family. According to her, Kevin's behavior might have been slightly inappropriate, but their family had no issues before I came along. She claimed that Kevin's marriage was now strained. Her sons were at odds and everything was falling apart. She demanded that I apologize to my sister-in-law, avoid attending family gatherings until things calmed down, and encourage Robert to reconcile with Kevin. I felt blindsided and deeply hurt by her accusations. She even threatened that if I told Robert about our conversation, it would prove that I enjoyed causing chaos in their family. Her words left me feeling isolated and confused. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't lie to Robert, and I didn't want our children to visit their grandparents without me. I felt unfairly blamed for a situation that wasn't my fault. I believed I had the right to swim in a pool on a hot day and wear a one-piece swimsuit without being subjected to inappropriate behavior. Accused of causing trouble, I felt offended by my mother-in-law's claims and struggled to find a way to balance protecting my dignity, my family's well-being, and maintaining peace within the extended family. This is where my story begins as I navigate the challenging dynamics of family conflict, personal boundaries, and the quest to protect my family from inappropriate behavior. Before Jake's return, my life was a blend of tranquility and fulfillment. Chris and I had built a solid foundation together over the 8 years of our marriage. We met through mutual friends, and our relationship quickly blossomed into a deep and meaningful partnership. Chris was my rock VDJ, supportive, loving, and reliable. We made a great team, sharing responsibilities and celebrating each other's successes. Our children brought immeasurable joy into our lives. Our 6-year-old Lily was a bundle of energy and curiosity, always exploring and learning new things. Our 2-year-old Jack was just beginning to show his personality with bright eyes and an infectious smile. I took great pride in being a stay-at-home mom, ensuring our children grew up in a nurturing and loving environment. Every day was an adventure filled with the small but significant moments that define parenthood. My confidence was something I had worked hard to build over the years. I knew I was conventionally attractive, and while this often led to unwanted attention, I had learned how to handle it gracefully. I dressed modestly, not because I felt the need to hide my body, but because I believed in dressing appropriately for the occasion. Whether I was at a social event, the grocery store, or the beach, I maintained a sense of dignity and self-respect. Before Jake's return, family gatherings were occasions I genuinely looked forward to. Chris's parents, Alice and Bob, had always been warm and welcoming. We often spent weekends at their house, enjoying barbecues, playing games, and watching the children interact with their grandparents. Alice was particularly fond of Lily and Jack, and seeing her dot on them always warmed my heart. Chris's younger sister Megan and her husband were also regular attendees, and our interactions were always pleasant and supportive. Our family dynamics were harmonious and loving. Alice and Bob had a close-knit family and welcomed me with open arms from the beginning. They appreciated my efforts to maintain family traditions and values, and we shared many memorable moments together. I felt like a valued member of their family, and our interactions were characterized by mutual respect and affection. The peace and harmony of our family life made it easy for me to navigate any challenges that came our way. Chris and I communicated openly and effectively, resolving conflicts with empathy and understanding. We made decisions together, always prioritizing the well-being of our children and our relationship. Then Jake returned. His re-entry into the family dynamic brought an unexpected and unwelcome shift. Initially, I was optimistic about his return, hoping it would strengthen family bonds. However, from the very first family gathering he attended, I sensed something was off. Jake's behavior towards me was unsettling. He stared too long, made inappropriate comments about my appearance, and invaded my personal space in a way that felt invasive and creepy. At first, I tried to brush it off, hoping it was just a phase or a misunderstanding. I didn't want to disrupt the family harmony, especially since everyone was excited about Jake's return. But as time went on, his behavior didn't improve. In fact, it became more intrusive. He started sending me messages on social media, sharing pictures and videos that made me uncomfortable. Although the messages seemed harmless, they felt wrong. Despite my discomfort, I didn't want to cause a scene. I confided in Chris, who assured me he would talk to Jake. Chris acknowledged that Jake had always been difficult, but he believed a conversation could set things straight. Unfortunately, the situation only escalated. Family gatherings, once a source of joy, became occasions I dreaded. The tension reached its peak when Jake crossed the line and tried to touch me inappropriately. Chris saw it happen and immediately confronted him. The confrontation was heated, leading to a physical altercation that Bob had to break up. We left in a hurry, the atmosphere charged with unresolved anger and hurt. My confidence, which had always been a strength, began to waver. The once harmonious family dynamics were shattered, and I felt isolated and blamed for a situation I didn't cause. Navigating this new reality required strength and resilience, qualities I had to rediscover within myself for the sake of my family and my own well-being. The discomfort began subtly, almost imperceptibly at first. The first family gathering after Jake's return was a welcome home barbecue at Alice and Bob's house. The sun was shining, the kids were playing in the yard, and the air was filled with the smell of grilled food and laughter. It should have been a perfect day, but I felt a strange undercurrent from the moment Jake walked in. During that barbecue, I noticed Jake's eyes lingering on me a little too long. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination, chalking it up to the fact that we hadn't seen each other in years. However, as the day progressed, his behavior became more apparent. He would stand uncomfortably close to me during conversations, making my skin crawl. He made several comments about my appearance, complimenting me in a way that felt less like admiration and more like objectification. "Jessica, you haven't aged a day," he said, his eyes scanning me up and down. "You look even better than I remember." I smiled politely, trying to deflect the compliment. But inside, I felt uneasy. These comments continued over the next few gatherings. At a family dinner a couple of weeks later, Jake sat across from me at the table. I could feel his gaze on me throughout the meal, and every time I looked up, he was staring. It was unnerving. My discomfort grew with each encounter. At Lily's birthday party, Jake found reasons to be near me, brushing against me as he moved through the crowd, standing too close while we watched Lily blow out her candles. His comments became more suggestive. "That dress looks amazing on you, Jessica," he whispered as he passed by, his eyes lingering on my chest. I tried to ignore him, focusing on the party and my daughter's happiness, but the tension was palpable. I began to dread family events, knowing that I would have to endure Jake's unsettling presence. Despite my efforts to stay polite and avoid confrontation, his behavior was starting to take a toll on my mental well-being. The final straw came during a family gathering at the beach. I wore a one-piece swimsuit, feeling a bit self-conscious about my post-pregnancy stretch marks, but wanting to enjoy the day with my family. Jake's behavior escalated. He made a point to comment on my swimsuit, saying, "You look great in that, Jessica. Really shows off your figure," his eyes roaming over my body. I felt exposed and violated. Throughout the day, Jake found reasons to be near me, whether it was helping with the children or joining conversations I was a part of. At one point, while we were all gathered around the grill, he stood so close behind me that I could feel his breath on my neck. My heart raced with anxiety, and I quickly moved away, making an excuse to check on the kids. That night, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. As we drove home, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Chris, I need to talk to you about Jake," I said, my voice trembling. Chris glanced at me, concern in his eyes. "What's wrong, Jessica?" I took a deep breath and told him everything VGJ, how Jake's stares, comments, and physical proximity made me feel uncomfortable and unsafe. I described the incidents in detail, hoping that Chris would understand the extent of the problem. Chris listened quietly, his expression growing more serious with each word. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "Jessica, I'm so sorry you've been dealing with this. Jake's always been a bit of a jerk, but this is unacceptable. I'll talk to him." I felt a wave of relief mixed with apprehension. Chris's support meant the world to me, but I was worried about the fallout from confronting Jake. Nevertheless, I trusted Chris to handle the situation. I hoped that a conversation between the brothers would be enough to curb Jake's behavior. At the next family gathering, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Jake was more subdued, his interactions with me less invasive. I dared to hope that Chris's talk had made an impact. However, the reprieve was short-lived. As the months went by, Jake's behavior slowly crept back to its previous levels of inappropriateness. At a dinner party hosted by Chris's parents, Jake resumed his habit of standing too close and making suggestive remarks. "That color suits you, Jessica. Really brings out your eyes," he said, his tone dripping with innuendo. I felt my stomach churn with a mix of anger and fear. It was becoming clear that Jake had no intention of changing his behavior. Despite Chris's initial support, the situation didn't improve. Jake's actions continued to escalate, and I found myself constantly on edge, trying to avoid being alone with him. I confided in Chris again, expressing my frustration and fear. He reassured me that he would talk to Jake once more, but the lack of tangible change left me feeling helpless and vulnerable. The tension reached a boiling point at a family event where Jake attempted to touch me inappropriately. Chris witnessed the incident, and a heated confrontation ensued, culminating in Chris pushing Jake before their father intervened. The conflict was a stark reminder that Jake's behavior was not just a minor annoyance, but a serious violation of my boundaries and safety. As we left the event, the weight of the unresolved tension hung heavily in the air. I felt trapped in a cycle of discomfort and fear, unsure of how to protect myself and my family from Jake's predatory behavior. The once harmonious family gatherings had become a source of dread, and I knew that something had to change. The incident happened at a family barbecue, an event that should have been a joyous gathering filled with laughter and warmth. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the backyard as the smell of grilled food wafted through the air. I was helping Alice in the kitchen preparing a salad when Jake walked in. His presence immediately set me on edge, but I tried to focus on the task at hand. As the evening progressed, I kept a careful distance from Jake, mindful of his previous behavior. I was standing near the grill chatting with Megan about Lily's latest antics when I felt a hand on my lower back. I stiffened, hoping it was just an accidental brush, but then the hand slid down and grabbed my butt. I spun around to see Jake, a smug grin on his face. I felt a surge of anger and disgust. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I snapped, my voice shaking. Chris, who was just a few feet away, saw the whole thing. His eyes darkened with fury as he stormed over. "What the Jake?" he yelled, shoving his brother away from me. "Keep your hands off my wife!" Jake stumbled back, his grin quickly turning to shock and anger, into a scowl. "Oh, come on, Chris, it was just a joke. Don't be so uptight." Chris was livid. "That wasn't a joke, Jake. That was assault. Stay the hell away from Jessica." The commotion drew the attention of the entire family. Alice and Bob rushed over, trying to calm their sons. "What's going on here?" Bob demanded, looking between Chris and Jake. Chris pointed at Jake, his voice trembling with rage. He grabbed Jessica. "He's been making her uncomfortable for months, and now he's crossed the line." Alice looked horrified, while Bob's expression turned stern. "Is this true, Jake?" Jake shrugged, trying to play it off. "It was nothing. Jessica's overreacting." I felt tears well up in my eyes. The sense of violation was overwhelming. I had endured his inappropriate behavior for so long, and now he had escalated to physical assault. The shock and anger coursed through me, mingling with a deep sense of betrayal. This was supposed to be my family too, a place where I felt safe and loved. Chris's support was unwavering. He wrapped an arm around me protectively, his voice softening as he spoke to me. "Are you okay, Jessica?" I nodded, though my hands were still shaking. "I'm fine. Just let's go home." We left the barbecue in a tense silence, the atmosphere heavy with unresolved anger. As we drove home, I couldn't hold back the tears any longer. "I can't believe he did that," I whispered, my voice breaking. Chris reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry, Jessica. I should have done more to stop this sooner. I'll make sure he never touches you again." The emotional impact of the incident hit me hard. I felt violated and exposed, my sense of security shattered. The backyard, once a place of happy family memories, now felt tainted by Jake's actions. The physical sensation of his hand on my body lingered, a constant reminder of his disrespect and entitlement. Over the next few days, the tension within the family escalated. Jake's behavior was the topic of heated discussions, with opinions divided. Some family members, like Megan and her husband, expressed their support for Chris and me, condemning Jake's actions. Others, including Alice and Bob, seemed more concerned about the rift forming between their sons. Alice visited me a few days after the incident, her face lined with worry. "Jessica, I know what Jake did was wrong, but he's still my son. This conflict is tearing our family apart. Can't we find a way to move past this?" Her words stung. It felt like my feelings and safety were being weighed against the desire to maintain family harmony. "I don't know, Alice. What he did was unforgivable. I can't just pretend it didn't happen." The sense of violation lingered, affecting my interactions with the entire family. I felt exposed and vulnerable, constantly on edge during family gatherings. The trust I had once placed in this extended family was eroded, replaced by a wary caution. Despite the support from Chris and a few others, the incident left a lasting scar. It was a painful reminder of the boundaries that had been crossed and the respect that had been violated. The emotional impact was profound, but it also fueled my determination to protect myself and my family from further harm. I knew that the road to healing and resolution would be long and fraught with challenges, but I was ready to face it head-on with Chris by my side. A few days after the incident, my mother-in-law, Alice, came over to our house. I was at home with Lily and Jack, trying to keep the kids entertained while processing the turmoil from the barbecue, when Alice knocked on the door. I felt a pang of anxiety. Her unexpected visit was rarely a good sign, especially given the recent tension. "Hi, Alice," I greeted her, trying to keep my tone neutral. "Come in." Alice walked in, her expression a mix of concern and determination. She glanced around, taking in the scene of me playing with the kids playing in the living room before turning her attention to me. "Jessica, we need to talk," she said, her voice serious. I led her to the kitchen, offering her a seat at the table. "What's this about?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Alice took a deep breath. "It's about what happened at the barbecue. In the aftermath, Megan has been feeling very uncomfortable since then." I blinked, taken aback. "Megan? What does she have to do with this? She's feeling caught in the middle." Alice explained. She's upset about the conflict between Jake and Chris, and it's affecting her relationship with Jake. My frustration began to bubble up. Alice, with all due respect, Megan's discomfort isn't the main issue here. Jake crossed a serious boundary. He assaulted me. Alice nodded slowly, but her expression remained firm. I understand that, Jessica, and I'm not excusing his behavior, but the way things are escalating is tearing this family apart. Jake's marriage is suffering, and my sons are at each other's throats. We had no problems before you came along. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. So, you're saying this is my fault? Alice sighed. I'm not blaming you entirely, but your presence and the way things have been handled are contributing to the discord. I spoke with Megan, and she feels that you might be overreacting. Maybe Jake was being a bit inappropriate, but she thinks you should try to find a way to move past it for the sake of the family. Anger flared up inside me. Alice, how can you expect me to move past something like that? Jake didn't just make an inappropriate comment. He physically touched me without my consent. That's not something I can just brush off. Alice's expression hardened. I'm asking you to consider the bigger picture, Jessica. We need to restore harmony in the family. I want you to apologize to Megan for making her uncomfortable and to refrain from attending family gatherings for a while. Let things calm down. I stared at her in disbelief. You want me to apologize for what? For being the victim of your son's inappropriate behavior? Alice reached out, placing a hand on mine. Jessica, I know this is difficult, but we need to find a way to keep the peace. Encourage Chris to make up with Jake. We can't have this tearing the family apart. I pulled my hand away, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. Alice, this isn't about keeping the peace. This is about you wanting to sweep Jake's behavior under the rug and blame me for the fallout. I won't apologize for something that isn't my fault. Alice's eyes narrowed slightly. This conversation is between us women, Jessica. If you tell Chris about it, it will only prove that you're enjoying the chaos you're causing. Think about what's best for the family. With that, she stood up and walked towards the door. I followed her, my mind racing with anger and disbelief. Alice, you're asking me to lie to my husband and accept responsibility for something I didn't do. How can you think that's fair? She paused at the door, turning to face me. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the greater good. I hope you'll think about that. As Alice left, I felt a storm of emotions brewing inside me. I was furious at her unfair accusations and demands. The idea of apologizing for being a victim was abhorrent, and the suggestion to avoid family gatherings felt like punishment for Jake's behavior. But beyond the anger, there was a deep sense of sadness and betrayal. I had always tried to be a good daughter-in-law, to fit in and contribute to the family. Now I was being scapegoated for the actions of someone else. The thought of keeping this conversation from Chris felt wrong, but Susan's threat lingered in my mind. I knew I had to tell Chris. He deserved to know what his mother had said and what she was asking of me. The decision to stand up for myself and maintain my integrity was not just about me. It was about protecting my children and ensuring that they grew up in an environment where respect and honesty were paramount. With a heavy heart, I resolved to have a candid conversation with Chris that evening. I couldn't let this family discord compromise my principles or my sense of self-worth. Together, we would find a way to navigate this difficult situation, supporting each other and standing up against the unfair expectations placed upon us. After Alice left, I sat at the kitchen table, my mind swirling with a tumult of emotions. The conversation had left me feeling deeply conflicted. Her demands seemed unreasonable and unjust, but they were also accompanied by a threat that made my stomach churn. If I didn't comply, I would be seen as the source of the family discord, and Alice would make sure that Chris thought I was enjoying the chaos. The thought of lying to Chris felt like a betrayal of the trust and honesty that were the bedrock of our marriage. We had always been open with each other, sharing our fears, frustrations, and dreams. Keeping Alice's conversation a secret felt fundamentally wrong. Yet I couldn't ignore the potential fallout if I defied her. The idea of being blamed for tearing the family apart weighed heavily on my mind. I looked over at Lily and Jack playing innocently in the living room. My protective instincts surged. As a mother, my primary responsibility was to ensure their safety and well-being. Jake's behavior posed a direct threat to that. Avoiding family gatherings might keep them away from his inappropriate actions, but it also meant isolating myself and my children from the rest of the family. They deserved to have a relationship with their grandparents, but not at the cost of their safety or my peace of mind. As I reflected on the situation, I couldn't help but think about my self-worth. Allowing Jake's actions to go unchallenged would mean accepting disrespect and violation as part of my life. It would mean prioritizing family harmony over my own dignity and safety. I had worked hard to build my confidence and self-respect, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice that for the sake of avoiding conflict. The internal conflict was agonizing. On one hand, I wanted to protect my children and maintain some semblance of family peace. On the other hand, I couldn't stomach the idea of apologizing for being a victim or encouraging Chris to make up with Jake. The very thought made me feel sick. I deserved to feel safe and respected, and so did my children. I replayed Alice's words in my mind, trying to find a way to navigate the situation without compromising my values. She wanted me to apologize to Megan and stay away from family gatherings. She also expected me to persuade Chris to reconcile with Jake. All of these demands felt like a betrayal of myself and the principles I held dear. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that complying with Alice's demands would not solve the underlying issues. It would only enable Jake's behavior and undermine my sense of self-worth. I needed to stand up for myself, for my children, and for what was right. I couldn't allow fear and manipulation to dictate my actions. Finally, I decided to have an honest conversation with Chris. I needed his support and understanding to navigate this difficult situation. Together, we could find a way to protect our family without sacrificing our principles. I took a deep breath and resolved to speak with him as soon as he got home. When Chris walked in that evening, I could see the worry on his face, the exhaustion in his eyes. He had been dealing with the aftermath of the confrontation with Jake, and I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary. I had to trust that our relationship was strong enough to withstand this challenge. "Chris, we need to talk," I said softly, leading him to the living room. I took a deep breath and recounted the conversation with Alice, sparing no detail. I watched his face change from confusion to anger, and finally to a look of grim determination. "She had no right to ask that of you," Chris said, his voice firm. "You did nothing wrong, Jessica. Jake's behavior is the problem, not you." I felt a surge of relief at his words. "I can't apologize for something I didn't do, Chris, and I can't lie to you or avoid family gatherings just to keep the peace." Chris nodded. "We'll face this together. I'll talk to my parents again and make it clear that we won't tolerate Jake's behavior or any attempts to blame you for his actions." In that moment, I felt a renewed sense of strength and resolve. We were a team, and together we would protect our family and stand up for what was right. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but I knew we could navigate it with honesty, courage, and mutual support. With our resolve to stand up for ourselves and protect our family firmly in place, Chris and I devised a plan to address the situation head-on. We knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was necessary to ensure our safety and well-being. First, Chris arranged a meeting with his parents, Alice and Bob. We decided to speak with them together, presenting a united front. When we arrived at their home, the tension was palpable. Alice looked anxious, while Bob seemed resigned to the conversation. Chris and I sat down with them, and he began. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk about what happened with Jake and the expectations you placed on Jessica," Chris started, his voice calm but firm. Alice sighed, but Chris continued before she could interject. "Jake's behavior is unacceptable. He crossed a line and we won't tolerate it. Jessica did nothing wrong, and it's unfair to blame her for the family's discord." Bob nodded slowly. "We understand that Jake's actions were inappropriate, but this conflict is tearing the family apart." I took a deep breath and spoke up. "We want to maintain a relationship with the family, but we need to set some boundaries to ensure everyone's safety and comfort. We can't ignore what happened, and we can't pretend everything is fine." Alice looked conflicted but nodded. "What do you suggest?" "We suggest that Jake not attend family gatherings for a while," Chris said. "This will give everyone time to cool down and address the underlying issues. Additionally, if he does attend in the future, we need clear boundaries in place to ensure he behaves appropriately." Bob looked thoughtful. "That seems reasonable. We'll talk to Jake and make it clear that his behavior won't be tolerated." With that part of the plan in motion, Chris and I reached out to Megan and her husband. We invited them over to discuss the situation, hoping to clear the air and find common ground. Megan arrived looking wary but willing to listen. "Megan, we understand that this situation has been difficult for you," I began, "but it's important to us that you know the full story. Jake's behavior has made me feel unsafe and uncomfortable, and we need to address it." Megan nodded slowly. "I didn't realize it was that bad, Jessica. I'm sorry if I seemed unsupportive." "We appreciate that, Megan," Chris said. "We just want to ensure that everyone understands the seriousness of the situation and supports the necessary boundaries." Megan agreed to speak with Jake as well, reinforcing the message that his behavior needed to change. This gave us some hope that with time and effort, we could restore a sense of safety and respect within the family. As Chris and I faced the difficult path ahead, we knew that our commitment to each other and our principles would guide us through the challenges. Together, we would ensure that our family remained a place of love, respect, and honesty, that his behavior was unacceptable and that he needed to change. It was a relief to have her support, and it felt like a step in the right direction to ensure a safe environment for our children. Chris and I decided that family gatherings would now take place at our home, where we had more control over the situation. We also established a clear set of rules. Jake would not be invited until he demonstrated genuine change and respect for boundaries. These gatherings would be smaller and more manageable, allowing us to maintain relationships without compromising our safety. Chris and I also took steps to protect our emotional well-being. We sought counseling to help us navigate the stress and anxiety caused by the situation. The therapist provided valuable insights and coping strategies, helping us to communicate effectively and support each other through this challenging time. We also made a point to spend quality time together as a family, creating positive memories and reinforcing our bond. Whether it was a simple outing to the park, a movie night at home, or a weekend getaway, these moments helped us to reconnect and find joy amidst the turmoil. As the weeks passed, we saw gradual improvements. Alice and Bob respected our boundaries, and Megan's support helped to ease the tension. While Jake's behavior hadn't changed overnight, the steps we took ensured that our family felt safer and more united. Taking action to protect our family required strength, courage, and unwavering support from each other. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Through open communication, setting clear boundaries, and prioritizing our well-being, we were able to navigate the difficult situation and create a safer, healthier environment for ourselves and our children. Over time, the conflict with Jake reached a resolution. With clear boundaries set and the support of Chris, Alice, and Bob, Jake was held accountable for his actions. He eventually apologized and agreed to counseling to address his behavior. While it would take time to rebuild trust, the immediate threat was mitigated, allowing the family to start healing. The dynamics within the family shifted significantly. Alice and Bob, initially resistant, came to understand the importance of creating a safe environment for everyone. Megan and her husband remained supportive, fostering a sense of unity and understanding. For me, the experience was transformative. Standing up to Jake and setting firm boundaries reinforced my sense of self-worth and security. I realized the importance of advocating for myself and protecting my family, even in the face of familial pressure. Reflecting on the journey, I understood the critical importance of addressing inappropriate behavior head-on. It wasn't just about my own safety, but also about setting a precedent for respect and accountability within the family. Moving forward, I am hopeful for a positive future, confident in our ability to maintain healthy, respectful relationships and provide a nurturing environment for our children.